one that Michael would have probably talked about. You actually.
All right, but anyway, welcome back to Burning Subjects, mates.
Tonight on Burning Subject, we talk about time engines or something.
But good evening, ladies and gents. Today our sponsors are MSC Colgate B450. Check them out.
And Andrew gets a PTSD flashback from his pancake.
Dude, you're holding your tube of toothpaste the wrong way around. Rotate it 180 degrees. There you go. Today our No, there you go. Yes.
Today our sponsors are MSC Colgate B450. Check them out. Promo code revving my wife tonight.
Okay, that sounded horrible. So check them out. Promo code revving my wife tonight.
Fuck. Today we're gonna be reviewing one of a kin tonker that has has the 2.0 tractive goes up to the fucking 20 miles per hour for every time that I find a squeezable grenade in this economy.
Okay, well, anyway.
Yeah,
now, as Andrew said, today's episode is going to be about tank engines.
About good tank engines.
The link for a hefty amount. Because there's actually a pretty noteworty class of tank engines that will also kind of serve as a bit of a foreshadowing for next week's episode. But anyway, so it was the early 20th century in the United Kingdom. And George Jackson Churchward had recently become the chief mechanical engineer or locomotive designer of the Great Western Railway. He introduced a new standardization policy that allowed new locomotives to be constructed and designed with a whole bunch of interchangeable parts that did kind of result in the locomotives looking very similar. They kind of look the same, but those interchangeable parts, as the name implies, could be interchanged between several classes. So, designing and building new locomotives was simpler, less time-consuming, and cheaper. Now, one of his first big successes were his 2800s, Britain's very first 280 consolidations. Stephen, insert your typical meme line about that. 3, 2, 1.
If you would listen to me, that is not necessarily, when it comes to British colonies, they're at least more interesting than the American colonies, because they didn't have as many of them,
They had many of them.
America had shit tons, like almost every Class 1 railroad.
Yeah, but Stephen, consolidations became the new benchmark for British freight locomotives during the steam era. So if you want to say it, I'll say it. It's just another colony.
Okay, sure.
But basically, there was a bit of a problem. Although the 2800s were very successful, with 167 of them built across 2 big batches between 1903 and 1942, for short-haul freight trains, they were a bit big. This was a particularly big issue when it comes to Welsh mineral traffic. So, not just your generalized freight trains with your daily goods and all kinds of mixed cargo, but also, just transporting raw minerals from the mining pits to either ports or power plants. So Churchward had to go back to the drawing board and took some of the best bits from the 2800s and used it on a new class of heavy tank engines. This is the first class of tank engines we're going to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, the 4200s. Now, these were actually quite similar to the 2800s, but to kind of quote Chris Eaton Green from his Steam Locos and Profile episode of this class, like lions and tigers, they're from the same family, but they're not the same animal. I mean, granted, both of them were 280 consolidations with 55.5-inch driving wheels. By the way, Andrew, that's a very nice duck. And both of them did have 18.5 by 30-inch cylinders, as in both of them, like both classes had two of those cylinders of that size, 18.5 by 30 inch. But the main difference in terms of tractive effort related geometry is the boiler. On the 4200s, it was a bit smaller and had a lower working pressure of 200 psi compared to the 2800s, boasting 225 psi. And in terms, you also had a lower tractive effort. 31,450 pounds on the 4200s compared to 35,380 pounds on the 2800s. But then again, it kind of makes sense because the 42s were only tank engines. And hey, they were the biggest tank engines in the United Kingdom at the time of their introduction. I forgot if I already said it, but just in case, I'll say it again. Initially, 105 of them built between 1910 and 1923, and yeah, they were big chongas. For whatever reason, they were called turbo tanks, but they weren't that fast actually. Like 40 miles.
That probably meant turbo as in more horsepower, meaning more pulling power. Maybe I'm not so sure.
Maybe, and Andrew had to bill out. Interesting. But like the thing is, a 4200 could only do like 40 or maybe 50 miles an hour tops. Maybe 45. I think that really is about it when it comes to the top speed of a 4200. So I don't know why exactly they were called turbo tanks, but yeah.
Because why not? Because turbo, yeah, bro.
What?
What was the top speed again? I was like too busy trying to.
I think like tops, it would be definitely no more than 50 miles per hour.
That's decent for a freight locomotive.
Yeah, it is. And keep in mind, they were primarily designed for heavy, short-haul freight trains, particularly mineral trains. But yeah, then in 1923, Churchward's successor, Charles Collett, decided that he wanted to build more of these, but he wanted to incorporate a few minor fixes. Firstly, the major visual one, he fitted the main steam pipes that fed the cylinders onto the outside of the smoke box. Originally on the 4200s, they were on the inside, which looked very handsome, giving them a rather beautiful, slender neck appearance. But those internal steam pipes were a bit prone to leaking, so Collett decided, you know what, I'm going to fit these slightly less aesthetically pleasing, but far more reliable external steam pipes, so that they won't leak.
I made the duck look like it was saying
it. And then he basically gave him a bit more power. Because what he did, ladies and gentlemen, Collett also decided to bore out the cylinders a little bit, making them a bit bigger in diameter to a slightly more rounded off diameter of 19 inches. This had the effect of boosting the tractive effort to 33,170 pounds. He did do this on most of the 4200s, but he first did so on basically all the new engines that were being built and that were technically classified as the 5205s, of which a further 100 were built, the last one rolling out of the shops in 1940. However, there was a bit of a problem. Already at the start of the 1930s, Welsh mineral traffic was in such a decline that nearly 2/5 of the working population of Wales, at least in South Wales, was laid off. And but it was so fact that some of those new 5205 class locomotives didn't even get the chance to be put into service. Like in 1930, 20 of them were built and immediately shoved into storage because there was nothing for them to do. It's basically the steam locomotive equivalent of Mongolia having a navy. Mongolia, a country that's nowhere near an ocean.
What?
Or a windshield wiper on the back doors of a van that don't actually have proper windows.
Pretty sure the duck's face just
Wow.
describes it.
Holy fuck and holy duck.
Holy duck!
Realize
Holy quackers.
some point
What?
before the end of the month.
Quacker.
But there was a big saving grace coming up for these engines. Because when Churchward initially designed the 4200s, he didn't want them to be 280 consolidations, but instead 282 Mikados. He got to realize that plan in the first half of the 1930s, when those 20 extra engines were taken back to the workshop, mainly the GWR's own locomotive factory.
And they were made into chonkers.
Yeah, they were taken back to the workshop where they were built, which was the GWR's very own locomotive factory in Swindon. They were extended by 4 feet, so from 40 feet to about 44 feet or so. And they were given a bigger bunker, larger water tanks, and most crucially, to cope with an extra bit of weight, they were given a pair of trailing wheels. The result were the 7200s. Arguably Britain's biggest tank engines. Like, arguably. Some of them may have been a bit bigger, but, they would be in a big top 3 with the Northeastern X-Class, later reclassified as the LNER T1s. And Stephen, you're going to ejaculate to this. Those LNER T1s were 480 Mastodon tank engines with 3 cylinders.
Ooh.
And they were also, in a similar league with the British Rail Standard 4 tank engines, which were 264 Adriatics. But yeah, needless to say, the 7200s, they were, like the 4200s and 5205s, they were big chongas. The 7200s were bigger chongas. In total, 54 of them were built from rebuilding and extending mostly 5205s and even a few 4200s. Because, like I said, most of the 4200 class locomotives were updated to the 5205 specifications, or at least given the outside steam cylinders. By 1966? Hold on. I gotta look this up because I already shut down the DVD. Yeah, we were actually watching that episode earlier.
Yes, promo code
They were withdrawn by the end of 1965.
Promo code Chonky Tanker.
But yeah, in total, there were 11 of these so-called turbo tanks preserved. 5 4200s. One of them I actually saw in real life in bits, which is actually the thumbnail. 3 of the 5205s, though one of them may disappear soon, probably, because it's being used as a donor locomotive. And then there were 3 of the 7200s preserved. Like, the reason I say one of them for the 5205s may disappear is because its boiler is going to a different replica project, and I'm not sure what will happen with the rest of the engine. Like, there was a list of locomotives comprised of tank engines and tender engines known as the Barry 10, which were 10 steam locomotives purchased or rescued from Barry, but intentionally left in scrapyard condition as a reminder of what those locomotives look like and to represent the challenges that preservationists had to overcome when rescuing these engines. And in the mid-2010s, that list has actually been reduced to the Barry 9, when one of them was basically taken apart to such an extent that the base identity of that engine, the frames, were broken up for scrap.
Oh, sorry, I had to drop out for a little bit. I just got some KFC.
Andrew, you appear to be muted.
Wait.
Or is that just an illusion?
Who, me?
I appear to be muted.
Yeah, you were muted a bit on Discord. Like, I am watching your stream, but the stream is always a little delayed compared to the voice call on Discord.
Am I
And I have the stream muted on YouTube.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, well then, just making sure. But Steven, you were saying something about KFC. Well, my friend Dylan here has something to say about that.
What? Kentucky Fried Chicken?
Yeah, I just went there.
Kentucky Fried Chicken is the best of the three big fast foods, in my opinion. I mean, I love Pepsi Cola. Their chicken is, moderately healthy or something. I just wish that they had thicker fries
Well,
and pretty good salads like they had in the earlier days here.
well, Jim.
But anyway.
Huh?
Yep.
Well,
you wanted to say something, Andrew?
Well, once you are done talking about the 42 and 72s, I have my tank engine, obviously.
I'm pretty much finished with the 4200s. And I did make several Gmod models of them. I did make the two scrappy engines that I saw in real life, 4248, which is in the thumbnail, intentionally left in bits as a display piece so that people can see what it looks like when a steam engine is being built or undergoing a heavy refurbishing. You can visit that engine in Swindon Steam Museum in the former GWR locomotive factory at Swindon. I also built number 5227, which is, the scrappy 5205 that I saw, which currently resides at Didcot Railway Centre. And then and as for the 7200s, I built number 7218, which hasn't been preserved.
All right, but Steven, you wanted to say something?
Also, I guess the last thing I want to note is that two of these engines, 4277 and 5239, were actually spiced up a little bit. They were painted in Great Western lined green, and they were named Hercules and Goliath, respectively.
Who will I fight? Who will fight me?
Yeah, and basically, in case you were wondering, why did they go with 52 or something? Why not 4305? That's a bit of blame Churchward for that one, I guess, because since his days, the GWR kind of started putting in a scheme where if a class of locomotives that starts with a rounded number gets over 100 locomotives, for that 101st engine, they skip 1,000. So, number 4300, that wasn't a Connie tank. That was the first of Churchward's 260 moguls. So the 4200s, in case you were curious, 4200 through 4299, and then the last five were numbered 5200 through 5204. Then Cullen made his tweaks, and that's how we got the 5205s. 100 of them were built, but they were never in service simultaneously prior to the 7200 program being started. So, yeah, it's a bit of a confusing ball ache when it comes to the numbering of the 5200s. Anyway, I am done.
Oh, man. Oh, also, I hate to be like this, but, before the stream started, I did point out that there would be a couple of locomotives that if Michael was here, he probably would have talked about. Can you guess them?
Brooklyn Eastern District Terminal number 15. And what else?
It's the 65 locomotive that you built him on Gary's mod. The one.
Oh, yeah.
And he's still running it.
For him.
Yeah. What did I want to say again? Oh, yeah. Wait, I forgot one last thing. If you were to look up a picture of a 42 or a 5205 or a 7200, just so you know, there's actually something slightly interesting on them. When you would think 280 consolidations, you would imagine that the main pair of driving wheels, where all the running gear comes together, marked with the biggest counterweights,
they were able to swivel. Let's move on.
Driving axle.
Okay.
But on those 4200s,
it was on the second.
Yeah, it's on the second driving axle. Granted, the 2800s, the tender engines that they were based on, they had it on the third, but the 4200s were a bit different. It helps to set them further apart from their tender engine cousins, basically. Oh, and the same thing could also be said for the larger 4700 class consolidations, but that could be a case for another episode. Maybe next week.
But actually, not next week though, Jim. That'll.
Oh.
But actually, we'll let Simba know.
Let the thoughts simmer.
Yeah, but anyway, let's
Yeah.
move on to the tank engine I wanted to talk. Well, would this classify as a tank engine? I mean, I guess it does, but well, none other than the
Yeah?
what, Steven, what happened with your microphone for a second?
Huh?
Steven, your microphone just went like.
I'm pulling open the damn the food from KFC.
So
Like
all I heard was
chicken
just the
sandwich.
steam just.
The popcorn chicken is what it looks like.
But anyway, the tank engine I'm going to be talking about is none other than the very small Porter, none other than the JNL Porter 040.
58.
No, not just the 58, its entire class actually.
But
Complete with the tiniest tenders in history.
Yes. The JNL 58 and its class have actually, from what I've discovered, actually went down in history as the smallest production steam locomotives ever made.
And they were pretty damn mass produced, right?
Yeah, they were almost about 150 were mass produced, and well, most a few survived, but I mean, not in good
When were
condition.
they actually built?
Let me see here. I mean, I got to do a little bit more research, but as I said, well, while I'm finding this research, the JNL 58, these 040 tank engines built by Porter, of course, were actually some of the are the smallest production steam locomotives in the world. Well, when it comes to back in the 40s, because nowadays people make mini steam engines, but we're talking about like original steam locomotives, for actual industrial work. With these things running on 23-inch gauge track and a driver diameter. One sec.
Yeah, I literally have the picture right here with the tractive effort related geometry.
But, well, either way.
So, do you want to say that the diameter of the driving wheels was 33 inches?
Yes, 33 inches. And then what was the weight of the locomotive?
Hold on. The weight of the locomotive by itself, 93,000 pounds, which is heavy for such a little thing.
Yeah, there was a reason that there were a couple of reasons that these things were actually called the rolling ingots. The rolling ingots were named these for I'll name two reasons. One, the locomotive itself was actually shaped like a giant brick because of its pretty bulky saddle tank and its square cab. And, of course, the cylinders being squished in between to make it even more square-like.
I call that more of a box tank.
Yeah, I wanted to say that. It may be a little curved, but it's definitely more along the lines of a box tank.
Yeah. But another reason that these are called the rolling ingots is because in the very center of the frame, there's a huge solid steel metal block that gives the locomotive more weight for more traction.
Yeah.
That you didn't
Also,
What did it have?
would you like me to finish off the tractive effort for that?
Yes,
thing?
I would like you to find the
Yeah,
tractive
please
effort for
do
this
it.
small boy, because this is an interesting one.
Yeah, we already mentioned the driving wheels.
Oh,
33
wait,
inches.
but before you mention the tractive effort, I'd like to mention an interesting thing about the JNL, about these locomotives' boilers. Originally, they were actually designed to be at 200 psi, but they ended up exceeding that by 30 psi. Interesting.
Oh. Well,
So-
I got that picture ready, which may be like an early production picture or so with the original stats.
Yes?
In which case, I'm going with the original pressure of 200 psi.
Yes.
And when you combine those wheels and the boiler pressure with a pair of 15 by 16 inch cylinders, you get a tractive effort of 16,700 pounds.
Not bad for a small engine.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said,
16,000. But they wow, that's only the E2s only had 5,000 more, just about.
yeah. So I mean, we're not. By the way, for those people who are wondering, hey, 1 sec. Let me just Well, no,
Oh, wait.
I'm not going to, because the E2s were trash. We talked about them in the episode called Can Canucks.
Which they're not
Yeah.
Canucks at all.
They're not well, they're shits. They're basically piles of literal shit in a nutshell. But Jana 58 and her class, the only reason we were talking about 58 more is because, you know, that one has gained quite the reputation as the world's smallest excursion star and the most unlikely locomotive to ever be restored. But the class of locomotives actually started out as small saddle tanks, which were even smaller than what you see now with the JNL 58, which actually were, their cabs were completely open originally. And then, you know, well, their saddle tanks, it was just a normal saddle tank, and the fuel economy was much smaller, and the locomotives were a lot lighter. And then there was a third version, which actually introduced the more boxy-looking saddle tanks. And then, well, it still didn't have a cab, but it had the it had a little bit bigger drivers, which of course allowed it to move a little bit easier. And then finally, in the end, which if you don't know what J and L actually stands for, it stands for Jones and Latin Steel. Well, it's a steel company, but anyway, JNL 58, specifically 58's class, I think there were about, from what I remember, like 58 with her class specifically, and not the other two that I mentioned. There were about 50 made, if I remember properly. Anyway, I think from 1937 and 1935, and well, when it comes to axle loading, these things were heavy, and you already know that. But then again, when it comes to these things were made to haul iron ore, like molten iron ore, a lot of it too, and on a short distance of track. And well, they did their job very well. Until, of course, inevitable retirement in the 50s. And well, from 58's class, if I can remember properly, there are 5 around today. 58, 57, wait, no, not 57. Yeah, I think 57. I think 60 was scrapped. I mean, 61 is definitely around. 50, oh yeah. But either way, a couple of these were preserved, but, you know, most of them were not actually known of until, you know, at least one was even recognized. And that was, of course, 58, which 58 actually went through many owners after it was retired in the 50s. So first, after it was sold from the Jones and Latin Steel Industries, it was given to a scrapyard along with its sisters, and then 3 of them were bought by a farm owner. And well, he kept them at his farm for about, well, roughly 50 years, and he had been trying to sell them for scrap the entire time, in which 58 and 61, if I remember, were the only ones in good enough condition, with 58's frame and boiler being in good enough condition, but the saddle tanks from 58 were originally gone. And
wait a minute.
Oh.
Well, I need to chime in here. Wasn't it 60 and 57?
It might be 6. Let me see, actually.
Oh. By the way, Andrew.
Yeah?
I forgot another thing to note. 4200.
No!
It's just that, you know, I wanted to point out the wheelbase of the locomotive. But it's something small that I can do when you're finished about the JNL 58 and its class.
Okay. But, well, it was soon bought by the Youngstown Steel Heritage Corporation, which planned to, of course, restore the local. Well, originally they actually planned to restore it cosmetically, but after they found the condition of the locomotive, they got it, of course, to running condition. But the thing is, as I said, most of the original parts of 58 were sold for scrap metal. And one of these things was the original saddle tank. The original smoke box door was gone. I mean, part of it, like part of the front, the square part, it was still there, but in rough shape. And the cab was just horrendous. It was just, it looks like if you take a can and then you twist it up too hard. That's what it basically looked like. And so they had to make a brand new cab. They actually got a driver from one of the scrap locomotives. I think it was 59, was it? I think it was 59. Yeah,
Wait,
it was
driver, as in a single driving wheel?
yes,
or a driving axle?
a single driving axle
Okay.
with 2 wheels, of course. And then they also got the saddle tanks from 57 as well, which they didn't know actually still existed, and so they used 59's saddle tank on the 58. So I guess the legend lives on. Not really a legend, but with
Interchangeability.
yeah. But with 58, when having most of her original parts, the boiler was sent off to, I think, Altoona, where the boiler was, of course, restored to factory fresh condition and operating now at 195 psi, which was, a little bit less because they had a lot of patching to do. But with the frame,
play it safe. Better to be a little bit below your maximum pressure than to be always over it and constantly blowing off the safety valves.
Yeah, and with that note, actually, there are who knows how many pictures of these locomotives, and 90% of them are the locomotives blowing off a safety valve from how powerful these boilers were. Kind of nuts. But with the frame, cylinders, and cab being, with the frame, cylinders, cab, and saddle tanks being rebuilt at the Youngstown Steel Heritage with a custom-made tender, which wasn't entirely accurate to the original, but was good enough to use. The JNL 58 blew her own whistle for the first time in 70 or 80 years on let me see when.
They're trying to build more tracks, so there's like a mile-long loop or something like that.
So let's see here, because I
got another. It's a miniature engine, but it's still a steam engine. Honestly, I dare say it's one of the most underrated, steam. Oh, that's what we should put on our underrated steam excursion stars list.
JNL 58, of course, but
does it pull any? I mean,
it does actually.
I'm not sure. I mean, it's underrated, yeah, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily a big excursion locomotive, but whatever.
It does haul excursions, but
okay.
So the JNL 58 blew her own whistle for the.
It's not going to be pulling mainline excursions because it's not standard gauge.
And on top of all that, it's 24-inch gauge. 23-inch gauge, which that's a very odd number. And why? Why, Porter? Porter, I'd like to contact you about your 23-inch gauge.
It's damn near 2 feet, though.
Yeah, damn.
Hold on, let me actually check this.
Also, I think there's this diesel locomotive or something like that they have. They put like a V8 in there.
Yeah, it's
like
just
when they drive it, it goes.
But anyway, the JNL.
Well, just went to do a bit of Googling.
But
looks like the engine is a little bit too narrow to work on the Festiniog Railway in Wales. In case they ever wanted it to go there or whatever. Not, it would be very unlikely, lol, but
it's a 2-foot gauge, isn't it?
No, Festiniog is 23.5-inch gauge.
Good enough.
Half an inch.
You know what? Screw it. Take him there. But anyway, as I was trying to say, the JNL 58 blew her own whistle, no, it wasn't her original whistle, but got to blow a whistle under her own power for the first time in over 70 years on November 24th, 2018. And well, the neighborhood actually. Here's something funny. It was kind of like what happened with the Western Maryland. There was a neighbor who actually called the police because of how loud the whistle was. Kind of. There was a. So the thing is, the Youngstown Steel Heritage actually is sort of a neighborly kind of museum, and so there's like neighbors around. And well, when they fired up the locomotive to blow the whistle and of course do the hydrostatic test, when they blew the whistle, someone called the police on them.
What an asshole. Who was it?
I don't know who it was, but when they told him the news, he had never seen a steam engine before.
Wow.
So when he heard that, and
he had a bad childhood.
So basically, when he heard that and he saw that, that was his very first time hearing the lonesome, soulful whistle of a steam locomotive.
Oh, classy. Whistles sound classy, especially if they're chimes. Was it a chime whistle? Better been a chime whistle.
It was for the whistle that they used in the test. It was a Steptown 3 chime. And JNF 58's original whistle, if I remember, it was also a 3 chime of some kind. But ever since that day, the locomotive has been running short excursions. Of course, at the Youngstown Steel Heritage, mostly just going backwards and forwards, until now when they've been making what is now called the Eastern Extension, where they're actually going to be taking the locomotive through a small stretch through the forest. So that's going to be cool. And not only that, but they actually are acquiring 2 more of these special locomotives. One of them they're going to restore to cosmetically back when it was still in operation, and then the other.
I already said this a few times before, but go on.
Yes, but then the other they're going to restore to operational condition. And currently, JNF 58 is getting a brand new tender that is going to be accurate to its original.
Slightly larger, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, slightly larger than that tiny tender, which I actually built a model of it on Gary's Mod, and don't try it yourself. It's too tiny to build. It is just too tiny. But now that I've talked about the rolling ingots, Steven, do you have a particular tank engine that you'd like to talk about?
How about the S100s?
Hold on, I did forget that one little thing about the 4200s compared to the 2800s.
Okay, say it quick, and then Steven, you can talk about.
Sorry. Basically, the 42s had a slightly bigger wheelbase compared to the 28s. On a 2800 being a tender engine, the engine itself isn't as heavy, so the wheelbase there from the center of the pilot axle to the center of the rear driving axle, 27.25, 27 and 1/4 feet. On the 4200 being a tank engine, the wheels were spread out a bit more. It was 28. It was 28 and 3/4 feet. So yeah, 27 feet and 3 inches on the 2800s, 28 feet and 9 inches on the 4200s. Because weight.
Yeah. But now that Jim has finally ended with the 4200s that took basically half of the entire stream,
because awesome.
Now Steven is going to talk about a locomotive that is designed not just for America, but also has been used in other countries, such, the UK. I've actually seen a couple in Asia too.
China, both halves of Korea.
But yes.
I don't know much about the S100s, but one thing I know about the S100s is that they outclassed the E2s when they were in Southampton as shunter.
Yeah,
Definitely.
That's what this stream is about. We're talking about good tank engines. And That means no triplexes, no E2 bullshit, no. What's another bad tank engine?
Great Western number 4600, the original 4600, a small 442 Atlantic tank, which didn't work that well.
Okay.
Or the large Atlantic tank engines could work too. Sorry to be a bit of a GWR nut, but I'll chuck you a picture of number 4600. Trust me, it was a big fat oddity as far as Great Western locomotives is concerned.
Are we talking about a GWR engines, or are we talking about the S100 United States Army Transport?
Yeah, I was just mentioning an example of a bad tank engine.
Okay.
Well, I don't know much about when they were built, though. Unfortunately,
they were introduced in 1942, I believe, and they remained in production until 1944. Hold on, let me actually look this up. Because if I remember correctly, there were 450 of them ordered. Yeah, but only 382 of them were built. Again, between 1942 and 44. They had, let's see, 54-inch diameter driving wheels. They had a pair of 16.5 by 24-inch cylinders, and the boiler pressure was 210 psi, which resulted in a tractive effort of 21,630 pounds. Combine that with a 10-foot wheelbase, and you get the perfect blend of strength and maneuverability to work in Southampton.
And not only that.
And the Southeastern Railroad Museum. And the California State Railroad Museum. See what I did there?
Yes, but not only that.
Cannon Rock number 10, isn't it?
Yes, but not only.
And the other one.
No.
Not only were these tank engines delivered along with the S-160s, but, of course, they actually somehow trumped them when it comes to fame and, flexibility. Well, for obvious reasons, really. Versatile machines that you could work anywhere.
Yeah. Though the weird thing is, when it comes, I actually don't know how many are preserved. Because that doesn't say. I don't think that says it anywhere. Oh wait, more than 100 of them were preserved at least, but not an exact number is mentioned on Wikipedia. Like 4 of them are preserved in the United Kingdom, though the 2 fault, believe it or not. Like they sent off for Barry Scrapyard to be cut up, but they suffered a bit of a hot bearing, I believe. But then they were taken in. But then they were acquired by a heritage line, so that's where they reside ever since.
I think when it comes to, you know what engine I'm going to talk about, aren't you? E2s.
No, this is good tank engine.
Oh, Fire number 97.
Yeah. Why'd you say Fire?
I forgot the Railroader Museum, but I know that. But I remember you saying several times that it appeared in a VHS tape called Firefighter George and Steam Engines.
Yeah, that. It was at the Southeast. It's preserved there, but now it's in pieces. It used to operate just the museum's trains, which were just short little train rides and loose stuff. It was decent, work for a small engine like that. However, it was taken out of service, I believe, in the mid 2000s, probably for the Cairns Canuck inspection, as I call them. I don't know why it was taken out of service, but they disassembled it and then they just left it out there and all that stuff. They just left it outside.
Sound familiar?
Now they don't.
Andrew.
What?
I just noticed that you didn't use my photograph of the 4248 as the thumbnail. You used a different one.
Yeah, it's a different locomotive.
Yes, I am that picky.
It's the same locomotive, but it's just a different photograph.
Whatever.
Anyway, continue, Steven.
But
And there's that engine. I don't know jack shit about Granite Rock.
neither do I.
Well, let's just say that
Other than the fact that it's oil-fired. Oil-fired tank engines, like...
I think 97 is also. I think 97 is also oil fired.
You know what? I mean, my model here, actually, this model that I just got for fun, I can actually see here that it's also oil fired, because you can see that it doesn't have a coal bunker.
Although the G-Mod, locomotive that we built of number 97 is coal fired.
Yeah, but like the thing is, I don't think that oil-fired tank engines were that good of an idea. Andrew, you ripped its face off.
Oops! Look into my
They
eyes!
have a face.
Look into my eyes!
Nice windows, bro.
What?
But basically, as I was saying, I don't think that oil-burning tank engines are actually that good of an idea unless you got a very big bunker. Like in Germany, I shit you not, in post-war East Germany, they did actually try to, they actually did have some oil-burning tank engines in the form of several locomotives of the Prussian T20 class, later reclassified as the Baureihe in 95, but, like, trust me, it was a bit of a weird sight. And, like, the thing is, I think they would burn heavy bunker oil, and, like, trust me, for an oil burner, those bunkers are puny. It like, looks-wise, it shouldn't work. Like, based on first impressions, it really shouldn't work.
But, I mean, we've really been brief about this, but, I mean, honestly, I feel like there's probably... That actually reminds me, later on, you guys obviously know that some of those top 10 lists I did were kind of, iffy.
I guess.
Buddy?
Iffy, like, The thing is, I've decided that every year for certain particular lists, I'm actually going to redo them every year to see how my opinion changes.
Oh,
you're gonna redo your overrated Steam Stars list,
Maybe that might be a maybe, and
or underrated, or steam engines that haven't operated at present,
or that too. But yeah, we're also good. So yeah, basically going to be redoing some videos this year that, it's just like that are based on my opinion, that just to see how my opinion changes over the years. Especially because we noticed that in Steven's top 20 retired Steam excursions, we noticed that since the original was made, that his opinion had drastically decreased on 3254. Which, kind of affected the video.
yeah.
But that's because time changes. But that's why we're going to be doing this. And, well, before I actually have to...
Yeah?
Who's joined?
That's Steven. He rejoined.
But,
because apparently my phone is a pile of fucking shit and decided to just randomly cut the fucking audio out for no reason. What were you saying, Andrew? I didn't hear. Andrew?
Yeah. Simba?
What were you saying earlier?
Well, what do you mean, like earlier, like a minute ago, or?
Yeah, like just now, like you were just saying, like something about redoing the lists and all the opinions and stuff. What were you saying about my list?
Well, about your list, you know how your opinion changed from when you first made the list. Like, you first liked 3254, like, I wouldn't say like, but like, and then it drastically decreased to you genuinely hating it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a matter of how our opinions change over the years. With, more experience, more knowledge, we start to change. We start to become wiser and more informed of these things.
Yeah, and besides, I dare say I opened your eyes to the truth about 3254. Unfortunately, Owen doesn't seem to be opened up to the truth about 3254.
You will reveal the
Why
truth.
so?
What?
Why has Owen not been opened up to the truth of 3254?
Because he took a photo in front of it.
Preach it, Owen! Preach it, Andrew!
Because he took a photo of it.
Maybe it's because he doesn't have any particularly strong taste. Like,
Hey, Dylan.
I think he's one of those, he likes everything kind of equal. Apart from the CNO M1s. But at the end of the day, Steam is Steam for him.
Well, for me, steam isn't just steam. It depends on the mechanical condition of the locomotive and, its fame. Like, of course, we're going to talk about, JNL 58 and the underrated Steam Stars list that I plan to make on my channel with me and Jim and Andrew. But, shit, I don't even know what to say at that point.
Well,
this point, but
before anything, actually, because I had to end the stream soon, if you guys had to design a tank engine in some way that would be, fitting in this modern era of electric locomotives, what do you think you would add to your locomotive?
I don't think I would necessarily design something that would be mainline compliant, I guess.
No, not mainline, but, it's for, like, short lines. Short lines and shunting.
Well, then again, you mean, I don't know, actually. Like, I was actually thinking of something completely different and building a Texas-type tank engine.
A Texas-type tank engine.
Yeah, there were Santa Fe tanks, so
I think there was actually an Overland. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Africa there was an Overland tank engine.
I mean, there was also articulated tank engines a lot, but, like, to give you guys an example, for my tank engine, first, like, for custom design I made on Gary's mod, I actually made it to where the tanks, it's just a saddle tank, of course, but on one half of it, it would actually have oil stored inside of it. And then on the other half, it would have water. Well, the other 3/4 of it would have water. And then the other 1/4 at the bottom right here would have oil. Or the oil would be at the top and easily more accessible. And then the water would be, pumped into the side, while the oil would be pumped into the top. And another addition is notice how this locomotive here actually has very small cylinders. Well, when it comes to nowadays, it's mostly in America that we need strength. So instead, you still have the same diameter drive wheels, obviously, but you actually increase the size of the cylinders and put them at an angle to where the thing will have more tractive effort and, of course, will be more sufficient for working in these areas. And another idea is, of course, two things. One, roller bearings. Two, the Southern lubrication system. Which, if you know...
Pacific lubrication system,
yes,
I believe.
The Southern Pacific lubrication system, which the Southern Pacific lubrication system is the same lubrication system on the 4449, which has friction bearings. And the only reason that the 4449 was passed off as a normal locomotive because normal locomotives with roller bearings, they have to be, of course, just with a locomotive with friction bearings and a Southern lubrication system, it's just the same. But what if you combined both of those sweet factors together, roller bearings and a Southern lubrication system?
Try telling that to Owen.
You would have quite an interesting workhorse. And, well, of course, the maintenance costs when it comes to people would be cut down. And another interesting thing that I'd like to see is since nowadays they have automatic adjusters, you can actually add a computer on the one side of the locomotive that will automatically adjust the locomotive's boiler pressure. So you won't need a fireman. only an engineer. And plus, since the thing is oil-fired, you won't need to shovel in any coal. And the engineer can work solo on this thing.
Well, I think that's actually a bad idea. You still need a fireman to,
work with
inject
an oil-fired thing, I guess. I don't know.
to add water to the boiler, and of course to look out the window for any left-hand curves or right-hand curves, depending on what side the engineer controls are mounted.
The same kind of thing. What I'm doing with this same kind of monitor is like how they would do it for cars, like for fuel and just like intakes and everything, kind of like that, except you apply it to a steam locomotive, which is going to be more difficult, obviously, because these things, if you don't pay attention to them, they get even worse than a car. But it's something interesting to take note of too. But that's what I would do. But what would you guys do with your tank engines?
I don't know. I have no idea what I would do with the tank engine.
Like, no idea whatsoever?
No. I wonder. No. Fireless engines technically don't have tanks. Just because they don't have tenders doesn't mean they have tanks. So yeah, we should make an episode about fireless locomotives.
I think that actually might go under the same category of another video I'm planning on making.
What video is that?
And that video is about industrial types, like locomotives specifically made because of high rises in economy and basically, a lot of the industrial things are starting to get up to the top, and so they need more engines.
Yep.
But yeah, are you sure you don't have any ideas that you would put into one of your engines?
I don't know. I'd probably give mine what's a good valve gear I could put on mine?
Well, remember the valve gear that we were actually discussing last night then again, that's for high-speed locomotives. Definitely not Stephenson's, because we know that in the UK, it's quite a problem because, they can barely reach underneath there. And, Walschaerts is, I guess, the best go-to for a shunting locomotive and a short-distance freight locomotive. So, but then again, you're going to need to find a way to make it less cost-effective for, it to be constantly re-lubricated.
I really don't know. I really don't know.
It's really interesting to think about what you could, it's really interesting to think about what a steam locomotive would look like if it was in this modern era. I'd like to see drawings of that. Because if 614 is a coal-fired locomotive made in 1948, imagine what a locomotive that burns coal would look like today if it was built brand new, with new plans, new everything, and not like the PRRT-1 that's being built.
I just wonder. I really would like to see more steam engines built around here, but I don't know. But then again, some modern steam engines that were being built, there were some modern steam engines being built overseas that were very similar to American designs.
But yeah.
Wow, this stream has just went from us talking about tank engines to us just rambling on about a bunch of random shit.
I mean, not entirely random, but it's definitely interesting because a quote from Jeremy Clarkson is that, this is the exact quote: "Even Mallet, the steam train, is faster than most commercial trains." Take that into consideration for all you diesel farmers and out there. If Jeremy Clarkson, who is a car fan, agrees that a steam engine is somehow more efficient than a normal locomotive nowadays, don't you think that means something?
Yeah. thing is, whenever you see a train on a logo or something like that, it's usually a steam engine. It shows
Exactly.
you how iconic they are, yet nobody cares about them.
And here's something even cooler. There was a vote the other day on which locomotive they wanted on a T-shirt more. They chose 2 diesels and 1 steamer. You can probably guess which one won.
Steam engine.
Yes. Because steam locomotives are
They're
alive.
alive.
Alive. They make you feel
They have
alive.
a more unique shape to them. They don't have like just an awkward they're not hidden within a shroud unless they're streamlined.
Steam locomotives are alive. They make you feel alive, and they make you feel good to be around them.
Wait. Also, Jim, wasn't there a guy on Facebook that says that all diesels have their own personalities and characters to them?
They all sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Jim, tell us about that one guy.
I don't feel like it because I actually can't remember.
okay. But either way, that was this week of Burning Subjects. Tune in a couple of, well, most likely next week, where we're going to be talking about the great streamliners.
Oh.
Which means we're probably going to be talking about the old-foamed Hudsons.
Not just Hudsons, but we're also going to be going across seas to some debatable high-speed locomotives. Either way,
Oh no! You don't mean we're going to talk about those engines? Those two.
oh yeah, we're going to talk about it. Yeah, we're going to talk